The 2023 NFL regular season has been played and we are now entering the postseason. As you can imagine, there were both players and teams that exceeded expectations and failed to live up to the expectations they had on them entering the year just 4 months ago. In today's video, we will discuss 4 of the biggest winners from the 2023 NFL season. This will be a combination of players and teams, as a few players reminded everyone of who they are, while others stepped up seemingly out of nowhere and took the league by storm. If your favorite player or team is not in today's video, but you think they deserve a spot as one of the biggest winners, then they probably do, and you can probably make a very good case for them. But I think the players and teams in today's video made the strongest case all throughout the regular season. There is a lot to dive into with each player or team, and without further ado, let's begin. We are starting today's video with the Houston Texans. This video is being released on the day they play the Browns in the wildcard round of the playoffs, so if in the scenario they lose, every point here stands because it's been a wildly successful year for them. The Texans' wins in the 2023 season started long before their 20-point upset win over the Jags back in Week 3, which was their first win of the year, and in fact it started last January when former Texans linebacker DeMeco Ryans agreed to become the team's next head coach, despite the franchise looking absolutely nowhere near ready to compete, and despite him having every opportunity to go coach elsewhere. It of course was amplified for the Texans on draft night when they got both CJ Stroud and Will Anderson, but the expectations still weren't increased for this team. Yes, it would have been nice for Houston to have a good year, and even one or both of these guys had good Rookie of the Year campaigns, which they both did. Maybe they'd get to 7 wins and have the foundation for a good team for the next few years. Well, they each went above and beyond, as CJ will probably win the Offensive Rookie of the Year, with the only competition being Puka Nacua of the Rams, and Will Anderson will probably win the Defensive Rookie of the Year too. Will would go on to finish the year with 59 pressures, which led all rookies with the Chargers, Tuli Tuipulotu coming in second with 51 pressures. As if drafting these guys and having a player on each side of the ball wasn't enough for one draft class, they also got what I would consider a draft steal in the third round in local product Tank Dell, who would finish his rookie year with over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns, despite his season ending early in December. The reason we preface this part of the video with this video releasing on the day they play the Browns is it doesn't matter what they do in that game. Obviously, you don't want to see them get embarrassed and have Myles Garrett sack CJ 4 times and have a strip sack that leads to a defensive touchdown. Well, Browns fans might. But the point is, the Texans even winning the division in the first year of the Ryans and Stroud era is an incredible achievement by itself. From where preseason expectations were for any team, I think you can make the argument the Texans overachieved the most out of anybody, and I don't think there would be a close second. CJ threw for over 4,100 yards despite missing 2 games, and he threw just 5 interceptions all year. 5. Not only that, but Nico Collins broke out after playing the most games in his young career, and after having stable quarterback play for the first time, as he would finish the 2023 season with nearly 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. The 2023 Texans season dating back to last January was so successful that teams will use this as a blueprint of what they hope to achieve moving forward. This is an example of how a team can go from winning just 11 games in the first 3 years of the decade to winning 10 this year alone. Everything, and I mean everything, had been downhill for this franchise since the 2019 playoff game against Kansas City, in which they would blow a 24-point lead, with CJ Stroud expected to eventually pick this franchise up and have them compete again, only CJ didn't get the memo you're expected to struggle in your first year or two at the NFL level. The 2023 Texans overachieved in nearly every single way. And the NFL playoffs are finally here, and I have teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official partner of the NFL, who is kicking things off with a huge offer. Throughout the NFL playoffs, all new customers will get $200 in bonus bets instantly when they place their first $5 wager on anything. It's as simple as it sounds, so make sure to download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up using my promo code ANALYSIS. And if you are already signed up for DraftKings, like me, you can get a no-sweat bet, meaning you get a bonus bet back if your same game parlay does not hit. There's going to be a lot of good football play this weekend, and if you like to cheer on multiple teams and want to bet them all, well, you can combine multiple bets together for a shot at an even bigger payout. If sports betting is not available in your state, don't worry, you can still join in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports. But download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, and new customers who use my promo code ANALYSIS and bet $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ANALYSIS, and a big thank you to DraftKings for sponsoring today's video. Next up is the Los Angeles Rams, and this may be a surprising one, but like with the Texans, I was extremely impressed with the 2023 Rams draft class. We have went into depth before with how much pressure there is on the front office when you consistently trade first-round picks for star players, on hitting on late-round picks over the years, and banking on those guys to be depth pieces for the future. The Rams had a bad run of drafting over the past few years, where in years past they had selected guys in the later rounds like Cooper Kupp, John Johnson, and even guys like Sebastian Joseph Day and John Franklin Myers. Their lack of offensive line depth really hurt this team during the 2022 season, and they would eventually finish the year 5-12, and Matt Stafford was sacked 29 times in just 9 games, which is obviously, well, not good. For reference, Stafford played 15 games compared to the 9 he played in 2023 and was sacked just 30 times, which is obviously huge improvement. I had a lot of concerns with the Rams entering the year because I thought they were essentially stuck in no man's land without a great future in front of them. Matt Stafford is 35, and while Matt isn't the player he was 10 years ago, he's still a lot better than a lot of other NFL quarterbacks, and I thought the Rams, due to a combination of having veterans that are good, but not good enough, and by having a bunch of young players, well, I thought LA would finish the year with 7-9 wins and be in the classic situation of half in, half out. But they're not. They made the playoffs, and with a combo of Kyren Williams and Puka Nacua, and with how good their defense has been playing, to me, they are the epitome of a team nobody wants to play in the playoffs. Since their Week 10 bye, they are 7-1 with their lone loss coming to the Ravens, and might I add, the Rams even took the Ravens to overtime. Everyone loves Kyren and Puka, and rightfully so, as each player had career years in 2023, but the additions of Byron Young and Kobe Turner to this defense were absolutely huge. The Rams obviously have a pretty good player on their interior defensive line who you may know by the name of Aaron Donald, but Kobe and Byron each finished top 5 amongst rookies in pressures, and even through the first 8 weeks or so, Byron was actually leading the 2023 draft class in pressures. Yes, having Aaron there certainly helps them get one-on-one opportunities and certainly makes their jobs easier, but they still have to make plays and get after the quarterback. LA having 3 players with 8 or more sacks was not something I expected heading into the year, let alone with 2 of them being rookies. This obviously has the potential to age poorly, as they could be a wildcard exit against the Lions, but I think this team can make a run. They more or less had a bye week prior to the postseason starting, as Carson Wentz started against the 49ers in Week 18, and they not only are a team nobody wants to play, but they are a team heating up at the right time. Yes, they played Dallas earlier in the year and in fact lost to them by over 20 points, but the Rams are a much different team now than they were back in late October. And no matter how the playoffs end for them, I like what this team has heading into 2024. From LA to Indy to discuss the Colts, and the big thing entering the 2023 Colts season was there was not a lot of expectations for this team. They obviously wanted to win more, as they won just 4 games in all of 2022, but the 2022 season was embarrassing for them in a variety of ways. It's obviously never good to fire your head coach, which they did, as they would go on to fire Frank Reich after a 26-3 loss to the Patriots in Week 9. Now, as if it couldn't get worse, well, you guessed it, it did. They hired Jeff Saturday, which was a completely out of left field hire that shocked everyone, and a few of the losses during the Jeff Saturday era were particularly embarrassing. They lost by 35 points on Sunday night to the Cowboys by a score of 54-19, and the next game, which was immediately after their Week 14 bye, they blew a pretty big lead to the Minnesota Vikings as they were up 33-0 at halftime. They would also lose to the Texans in Week 18, which eventually gave the Bears the number 1 overall pick. They would hire Shane Steichen in the offseason, and one of the most impressive things Steichen did in year 1 was have them go from 30th in points per game to 10th in points per game in 1 year. The 2023 receiver class had a pretty good rookie year overall, but you may be surprised to find out that Josh Downs, the Colts' 3rd-round pick this year, finished 6th in receiving yards with over 750 yards. I do think Indy will re-sign Michael Pittman this offseason, and I love the duo of Pittman and Downs in Indy for the next few years, along with quarterback Anthony Richardson. Another reason why I think the Colts' 2023 season was so impressive and why they are big winners is they did this with a backup quarterback and running back running the offense for most of the year. Indy had a lot of excuses throughout the 2023 season to basically roll over and say, yeah, times are tough and we'll be back next year at full strength. But they didn't. After the Saints game, which was in Week 8, they allowed 400 or more yards to an opposing offense just once, which was to Atlanta in Week 16. The Colts defense finished 28th in points allowed per game, but that improved as the season went on. With an offseason to get better players and to spend more draft capital, I really like where this team is going, and they just finished 9-8. Sure, you can be disappointed with how their season ended in Week 18, knowing if they beat the Texans, they would have been AFC South champions, but when you have a long-term vision in mind, yes, that obviously stinks, but you're building for Super Bowl titles. If I had to guess, I think Indy will be in position to compete for another division title as early as next year. They needed to right the ship after a horrific 2022 season, and under the guidance of Shane Steichen, they did just that. From Indy to Baltimore, we go to discuss the Ravens, and where do you begin with the 2023 Ravens? They finished the year 4th in points per game offensively and 1st in points allowed per game defensively. Each of their previous 2 years were not just an injury or two away from seriously competing, but completely filled with injuries, and Ravens fans knew that entering the year, if they could just stay healthy, they would be amongst the NFL's best, and in 2023, the cards aligned for them. Lamar Jackson is expected to win his second MVP of his career, as Lamar threw for a career-high 3,600 yards, along with 24 touchdowns, and tacked on an additional 800 yards rushing along with 5 rushing touchdowns. There were a lot of people worried after Mark Andrews went down, and a lot of people were wondering if this team would be the same, but they would go on to be 5-0 in games Lamar Jackson would start for the remainder of the year. The defense has been unworldly, and there's times where you can tell opposing offenses want absolutely nothing to do with the 2023 Ravens defense, and it starts with the man in the middle in Roquan Smith. Roquan finished the year with 158 total tackles, and there's always mixed feelings about paying a linebacker due to the physicality of the position. Similar to how there's always mixed feelings with paying running backs, it's just not as publicized with off-ball linebackers, but Roquan Smith has been everything the Ravens could have hoped for and more when they traded their second-round pick to the Bears prior to the 2022 trade deadline. I am saying this in a joking manner because of how good the Ravens were in 2023, but Roquan did say that you're not officially a Raven until you beat the Steelers, which they have not beat the Steelers since Roquan has been a Raven, but I think winning a Super Bowl might officially make you a Raven if they end up doing that this year. There are playmakers everywhere on this team on both sides of the ball, and when you have an MVP winning quarterback, it makes everyone's jobs easier. They did not have a 1,000-yard rusher or receiver in 2023, but I honestly think that makes them even more dangerous in the playoffs because you never know who they're going to try and attack you with, and that's a big credit to offensive coordinator Todd Monken. Todd does a great job of keeping defenses on their toes, and I think there's a reason the Ravens didn't score 30 or more points in their first 6 games, but have scored 30 or more in the 8 of the remaining 11 games since. It took them some time to figure out the offense and to truly adjust, but as long as they don't commit silly turnovers the way they did at times earlier in the year, I have a hard time seeing this team not go to the Super Bowl. They had a lot of naysayers entering the year and are without question one of the biggest winners from the 2023 NFL season. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 35% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.